This episode is different. Instead of having a one-on-one conversation, today I bring to you four extraordinary leaders in math education. With the support of the Gates Foundation, these four amazing humans have joined forces on the Math Narrative Project, a powerful effort to reshape the stories we tell ourselves about mathematics, teaching, and learning, and who gets to be in those spaces. Their work calls on us to reassess the assumptions that we make in math classrooms and to focus on what matters most, creating relationships that help every student see themselves as capable of deep mathematical thinking. This conversation will push you to rethink what it means to teach math well and what it takes to create those classrooms where belonging and brilliance thrive. At the end of the episode, I will have all of their bios and you'll get a chance to connect with the amazing work that they're doing, not just with the Math Narrative Project, but also in their own individual work. So let's take a look. Well, we are here on Blue Glasses Math. I would like to welcome my amazing, beautiful guests. I have Dionne Aminata. I have Adrienne Baytops Paul. I have Deborah Peart Crayton and Nicole Joseph. Thank you so much for being here. I have to say, before we even get into the episode, this is the first time I've had four guests at the same time. And I have two teenagers. I have a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, and both of them said, wait, four at the same time or four throughout the day? Because it's always the question about who's going to manage the dogs if the dogs go wild. So they wanted to know how long they were on the hook for, basically. Are they on the hook for 45 minutes or are they on the hook for 4 hours? So they're very happy that I'm seeing all of you at the four at the same time. But there's a reason for that. So I'm going to kick this off to Dionne. Dionne, the reason why I invited you onto this podcast and this amazing team is to talk about the Math Narrative Project, which is something really special. And I'm just, rather than me trying to explain what it is, could you just give the listeners and me a little insight into what this project is all about?
Of course. Thank you so much for having us. So it all started just last year. I was invited by Michaela Leslie Rule, and she works at the Gates Foundation, and invited Math Trust to be a part of just some initiative looking forward. She was managing the Math Narrative Project, and just came to listen and understand what was going on with it. And I got a +1, so I said, let's go, Deborah. We're going to Seattle, and we're going to listen and learn about what's happening here. And what came of it was all of the organizations that were invited to Seattle that day were invited to apply for a grant. And we applied and we got it. And I asked my friends, Dr. Nicole Joseph and Adrienne Baytops to also join us. And here we are. And so the project is really about making sure that certain messages are going to different constituencies. So teachers, students, families, and we are focusing our project on bringing messages to teachers, and specifically to teachers from students. And our project is focused on Black student voices, bringing those Black student voices to teachers of Black students to support math instruction.
Yeah.
And we have been doing a lot of work around that because we had to first start off with getting student voices. And so we conducted, student interviews, students from across California. And it was a big undertaking because we got the grant in April. We figured out what we wanted to do by May, which meant we didn't have much time to interview students who were in school.
Yeah, right.
So we had, so it was a journey, but we ended up getting going straight to parents, going straight to families to get permission from
Smart.
from them to interview their child. And so we got it was great, and we got some real we had some real voices that were telling us exactly what's happening in their, being vulnerable enough to share exactly what's happening in their classrooms, in their experiences in the past, and just really powerful moments, sharing what was good, but also being real about what needs to change. And so they had some really, really powerful messages for teachers, and we're excited to share that moving forward.
So that was what I think that's what drew my attention. I saw a post on LinkedIn, and it was a child, and I thought students mostly middle school age or middle
Yeah.
school, high school. Okay, because I was a middle school teacher, so right away I see the middle school student, and I want to dive right in. And so yes, the vulnerability that you mentioned was so beautiful, and I thought, oh my gosh, it made me tear up, because I thought this is what we need. We need more students to be able to say the things, and to say it in a safe space where, number one, they know they're going to be heard, and also that they're not going to be judged, right, for their authentic responses to what's going on in math class.
Mm-hmm. Can I add something,
Go,
Pam, to
please, of
that?
course.
So as one of the researchers on this team, and as somebody who's been studying Black girls for a very long time, methodologically, this is very powerful. So, student voice as a methodological approach to collect data is super important, because as we know in math education, it's generally, observations. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those types of methods to understand certain phenomenon, but Black students have seldom, if ever, been positioned in math education research as knowledge producers. Surely not like producers of their own like experience and what they might need in math learning. So I just wanted to add that little piece.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for adding that. And I think, you started off talking about this whole idea of observation, right? As a lot of times the schools think, oh, the first thing we need is an expert to come and observe what's happening. It's like, no. We need to talk about what's happening and hear and listen to what's happening, because you can come in and watch a class for 45 minutes or 10 minutes or 3 days or whatever, but you really cannot get a sense of what's going on inside these humans who are really the ones who we need to serve. So
that's right.
Amen to that. Love it.
Yeah. One of the things, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to, I'm sorry, Dionne. I was just going to add on to what Pam said. When we do go into classrooms or administration, go into rooms, they are often looking for what the children don't know.
Yes.
Rather than identifying what they need. And so this project allows us to really center the needs of the students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. And I think with this increase you're coming at it with a different type of data, right? It's this increase in focusing on data and data-driven instruction. And I know that there's value in that, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I was in the middle of my teaching career when quarterly assessments, district top-down assessments started coming in. And when I tell you the number of days that it took away from, and I was working in a school with marginalized children, and I was teaching 8th grade. I tell the story in the beginning of one of my first episodes, and these kids, this was not helping them. This was definitely, these quarterly assessments were doing so much harm because of the amount of instructional time. That's number one, that I was losing, plus just the feeling that the students were under a microscope. Mm-hmm. And it really didn't do anything for their self-esteem. And it did not inform my instruction. I can tell you that right now.
Right.
What informed my instruction was how my students were showing up every day, and what I needed to do to adjust to meet their needs, like you're saying, Adrienne. So thank you for that.
Right.
Yeah, I wanted to just stay there for a minute, because when I was also a middle school teacher, And I thought about my own experience with just being a student in the classroom. I was very often the only Black student in my class, or one of just a very few. And that is very common in California. I don't know how many people know that.
No.
Our focus is California for this project. And so many of the students that we interviewed are just one of maybe one or two or three students who look like them in the classroom. And so that level of invisibility on top of the instruction that does not center students, right? So oftentimes they're just kind of going in, being quiet, coming back out, like, okay, that happened. And it doesn't really, a lot of times they're saying, well, I don't really feel anything when I go to class. And it's like, okay, so that makes sense when we look at the data. If we're really looking at the data, we see that no matter what the economic status is, no matter what the location is, no matter if there's a class full of Black students or just one, we are not serving our Black students in this country.
Yeah.
We're just not. Over time, it hasn't adjusted to be better.
No.
And so anytime scores go up, it goes up for everybody. It's not, it hasn't, when they go down for everybody and at the same rate. And so what we're seeing is that achievement gap, or the opportunity gap, or however we want to consider the gap, it's still there. And in California, we're also not just looking at the gap between Black students and white students. We're looking at a huge gap between Black students and also Latino students. And so when we see classrooms now, we see classrooms that are in Southern California, you'll see classrooms that are 10% Black and 90% Latino. And in those schools, still, we have the same issue of Black students falling behind.
This is
so the invisibility is a problem.
It's a huge problem.
Which again, I think speaks to, Pam, one of your questions around like, how is this helping to change math education? I think was the question that you were asking us. So again, we're collecting information and data that just doesn't get collected. So we are actually trying to influence the discourse in math education about like, what does it mean to teach marginalized students? And as an intersectional scholar, like breaking it down to think about Black girls and Black boys, Black students is qualitatively unique in my mind because of just the historical, history of our country, how African American people have been, not having access to mathematics and science and technology the way many other people have. And this is not about oppression Olympics. This is about deeply understanding communities, right? So doing the same thing with Latino kids, and we just happen to be studying Black. So I think that the findings, and we're going to hopefully continue doing this work, is going to contribute to the discourse in math education, but also on the ground practice with teachers, practicing teachers, which, we're doing these wonderful PD sessions. So I won't say any more about that, but
I want to hear more about that. But I hear you and I thank you. And I'll call out the elephant in the room as the one white woman sitting on this call, right? I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I want to be part of it. And I want this to be this, not to make this about me because I want to get into the math project, but when I worked with the students that I talk about in my first couple of episodes, it was very clear that there was a huge belief difference, right? Between what I thought they needed, what they thought they needed, because what they had been told math was, and what they had told the expectation was. And I refuse to believe, no pun intended, believe the narrative of the colleagues in the room who would say to me, this is the worst group that has come through this school. Just get them onto the, and then the next, because it was my first year in that school, but I had 8 years of teaching experience under my belt. So, this is the worst, this is going to be the worst year of your life. That's basically what I was told. And I refuse to believe that narrative, because I'm like, these are human beings. And I have one student who now actually works, hopefully still, I haven't talked to her this year, but she hopefully still works in the DOJ and the Department of Justice down in Washington, D.C. I spoke to her 2 years ago, and she told me that when she went to high school, one of the teachers said, "Wait, where did you go to middle school?" Because he saw what she was doing on her paper. And she told him, and she came back and she told me, and she said, "See," and I told her, I said, this is real. And this was before, this was, my daughter was born in 2006. So this was 2004. And I didn't have all the language. I didn't have all the words that we use now, right? I didn't have I did actually say to them, I teach math for social justice, even though I didn't know that social justice was a thing. I just kind of made it up. I mean, I didn't know. I just, because I said to them, I want you to be able to show how brilliant you are. The world's not always going to see that, which is, it's not your responsibility to tell the world, but be aware. And then she came back, and Gabby is her name, and she said, "Wow, look at that. You're right."
And that's what makes this project so unique. Is that the work of improving math instruction, especially for students who've been pushed to the margins, is not head work, it's heart work. So this notion of Heartwired research is unique, and it can really spark a different conversation when the voices of the students are brought into the space. Because you can look at numbers on pages, you can look at data and make your decisions and judgments and lean into stereotypes. But when you look into the eyes of a student who is telling you exactly what they need, who is asking you not to assume they're in a gang, who is asking you to just be patient with them, and sometimes they're frustrated and it doesn't mean they're going to hurt someone. That is what this work is, and that is what makes the Math Narrative Project work that we're doing together so different from any research that has been done before this project.
This is way bigger than math.
Dionne, I'm wondering if you could speak to that, how our 2 priorities, the assumptions, because I feel like Pam talked a lot about when those teachers said these are the worst kids, they were bringing a lot of assumptions. And we have 2 areas, interventions that we're trying to work on.
Perfect. Love it.
Yes. Thank you for teeing that up for me. No, but it is important, and it's something that I wanted to share. There are 9 messaging recommendations from this Math Narrative Project, and we're focusing our work on 2 of them. And two of them are reassess assumptions. And so that means we're encouraging teachers to re-examine their assumptions about what certain student behaviors mean and the impact of students' negative emotions on their math learning experience. And so specifically, since we're focusing on Black students, we want teachers to reassess their assumptions that they make about Black students not being capable, depending on those behaviors that they see, whether they are wanting to learn math or not. Like, those are common assumptions that are being made, that they're behind, that they're not capable, that they need so much help, that, they need procedures, they need shortcuts. We don't have to do all of the, student-centered work with them. So that's one. The other message is prioritizing building relationships. And so we want to show teachers the impact of their relationships with students. And so we want them to prioritize building those relationships so they can get to know their students. And hopefully that will have an effect on those assumptions that they make as well, right? So getting to know them, and then that oftentimes we think of building relationships in terms of culturally responsive pedagogy, and that is also important for that too, right? How can we be more responsive to students' needs if we don't really understand who they are and what they're bringing and contributing to the classroom? So those are really important. I also wanted to bring it back to California just for a second, because one of the things that I am also just I want people to be aware of is that when we think about data and how schools and districts submit data, when there's not a significant amount of students to say that we have to report this data out,
I know where you're going.
Then that you get a pass, right? And so oftentimes in many schools, Black students being less than 10%, they are not, the data is not reported on how poorly they are serving our students, right? And so what brings me joy is that we have a cohort of teachers who have said, I'm signing up. They wanted to learn more about how to serve their students, and most of them don't have a significant amount of students in their class to report that data. So teachers want to make a difference, and we have an incredible cohort of teachers who are ready to answer that call.
Beautiful. And is this a cohort of is this a virtual program? Do they come from all over this? How does it work?
So we made a call because it's two parts. It's not only virtual because the sessions are virtual because I wanted to make sure my colleagues could join us who are not in California. I do live in California, but we initially set out to serve students. Students in classrooms that are predominantly Black. There aren't that many in California. And so we wanted to open that up to teachers who serve Black students, whether they're just one student or a class full. And so we made a call to teachers across California, but specifically in Southern California and South Los Angeles, and in the Oakland Bay Area where I live. And so we wanted to make sure that we could also observe them in classroom, which is why we had to keep it small this time around in service of this math narrative project venture that we're on.
And I think the very nature of the data requires a certain level of not blowing it up so right out of the gate, right? Even if you're working with two teachers, it doesn't matter, which I know you're not only working with two teachers, but it's that precision is not the word I'm looking for. It's the care with which this project kind of needs to be nurtured. I feel like at the beginning, at least that's how I'm seeing it. I mean, maybe it's not at the beginning, but like in the beginning of this part of that project. Yeah.
For sure.
That's awesome. And so, okay. So a teacher comes to this program. They're coming with a set of assumptions. They're coming with a set of maybe even relationships, right? You mentioned the coming with assumptions and coming with maybe like a lack of relationship. What would a teacher expect walking into this? I think that was what I would be curious about. Is I'm a teacher, how do I learn this stuff, right? Because I'll tell you from my experience, I learned it at grad school, I'm like laughing, reading articles, watching videos, sometimes visiting classrooms, but also in my own boots on the ground experience that I was experiencing with my own students. I think this is much more robust. We've come a long way.
I'll hand that over to either Adrienne or Deborah to say how our cohort is going.
Deborah, so I guess I'm up. But please fill in without giving too much away.
Yes.
We are asking we are planning around those two messaging recommendations, right? The reassessing assumptions and prioritizing building the relationships by asking the teachers to come into this space by acknowledging that their bias at whatever level it exists, and to be vulnerable in the space. We try to create an environment, virtual for now, environment that asks them to kind of reflect on their practices and do a mirroring exercise of sorts, and be honest about how they have instructed or not instructed the Black students that have been in their care, as you said. I like the way that you referenced that, with the goal of helping them understand that it is not entirely their responsibility, but certainly it needs to be a collaborative effort, just like the learning of mathematics is an exchange of information, right?
Yes.
This developing these relationships, these diminishing or destroying these assumptions, that has to be an exchange too. The teachers have to get to know their students in order to make instructional shifts that the students really do need. And so we are providing activities and exercises around mindset shifting,
Yeah.
identity work. We're also providing information on strategies that call students and invite the students into the learning and into the math experience and into that first part of the lesson at the very start of class. We're also asking teachers to reconsider how they define mathematical thinking and whether they give students the opportunity to really engage in the various levels of mathematical thinking that exist. And that goes beyond just answering a question, right?
Yeah.
But it includes making connections. It includes acknowledging a mistake, but also seeing that that's a part of the process of learning mathematics. It includes various learner traits that a lot of times students of color or Black students don't get the chance to engage in because maybe their teachers don't think that they are worthy of learning mathematics. Maybe they don't see how they're going to use the math outside of their classroom. So what's the use? And so we're really trying to help address these things by providing instructional strategies that invite students to jump right at the start. Clearly, your dog agrees. I love that. Or we're also asking the teachers
Thank
to,
you.
well, one of the reasons that we're focusing on mathematical thinking is because so many of the students that we interviewed said they never had their teachers ask them about their mathematical thinking or to share their mathematical thinking. And those who did say, yes, I've been asked about my mathematical thinking, followed that with a response just referencing how they were answering a question, whether it was correct or not, rather how they got to that question. There was no explanation or exploration of the solution path that the students took, which is really what mathematical thinking is for us, right? That's what it's
Yes.
supposed to be
Of
for
course.
students. And so rather than have our teachers in our cohort walk away with the idea that mathematical thinking is just reduced to that and just to yes or no. We're trying to help them really see it in the multi-dimensional aspects that it exists in so they can provide that for their students of color, so they can believe their students of color have something worth sharing and then give them the chance to do so.
I just felt that in my soul. Because okay, so when you work with these teachers, I'm assuming so that we're recording this in August. So did you have a cohort that's already underway?
Yes, we've had one session already.
Okay, perfect. And then now the teachers get to go back to their classrooms, try some of these activities, or
Yes.
I don't like the word activity. Is it called activities? I mean, I don't like that I'm using that word.
Strategies.
Strategies. Okay, trying some of these strategies, giving their students an opportunity to show them what they're capable of. Because
Yes.
I think that is a huge piece in re-examining those assumptions.
Yes.
Giving the students a chance. I love it.
And listening and being active listeners. The same way we ask students to be active listeners in the classroom, they also need to be active listeners. And that's, again, how they're going to get to know how the students are thinking, how they're computing, how they're calculating, what level of confidence they're operating at, so they know how to adjust and provide what they need.
And
What
what
I
I
like
would
is,
add, Oh,
Go
I
for
was
it.
just going to say that what I would add to that is one of the most powerful tools that we're using would be the clips from the video interviews of the students. Because when consultants or PL facilitators come in and tell a room full of teachers, you need to do this, it's best practice to do that, and you should do this, you're like, yeah, 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 uh-huh, uh-huh. But when we say to you, students will let you know what they need and they hear a student say what they need, that has a different impact. The other thing is addressing assumptions. You need a counter narrative to cancel out the original narrative you've created in your
Yes.
mind or that you've lived with your whole life. Oh
Yes.
no, these kids can't. They cannot. And then to hear a student say, I wish a teacher would just let me try. They just give me the answer, but I want to learn. I want to do it for myself. I have a dream of opening my own business one day. And they don't say those things in their classrooms because they don't believe their teachers are even interested in hearing it. So in the cohort, in a session, as you're examining your own beliefs and as you are reflecting without judgment, how you can personally improve, not just, wow, the system needs to change. Wow, last year I said that that little boy can't do math because he wore a hood. It's like aptitude and attitude are not the same thing. And how many Black students are denied access to high level mathematics because of behaviors and attitudes rather than considering their aptitude for learning? So that's also a part of it, looking at who we are and what we have come to know, how we came to know it, and then being vulnerable enough to admit that that narrative is not true, and then what are the things I need to do to write that counter narrative in my classroom and for the students in my care? How do I know now develop relationships with my students, even if they're not doing it down the hall? How did this suddenly
Mm-hmm.
become more important to me? And when I'm sitting in the faculty meeting and they're making comments like, this is about to be the worst group of students based on what we've heard, to be the person in the space that says, how do you know?
Yeah.
To suddenly be the person in the room who questions every negative assumption made about Black students
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
replace it with something else. So that's like, to me, the
Absolutely.
big, like, yeah, we're doing really great things and we're teaching strategies. We're doing all of that wonderful work, but the students are leading the way by having their voices in the space.
Mm-hmm. Before we get too far away, again, as like the researcher, there is a researcher named Courtney Kasdan. She designed the idea of IRE: initiate, respond, evaluate, specifically like in mathematics. So what that looks like, we do it all the time. What's 6 times 6? That's the initiate.
Mm-hmm.
Student response 36. And then we say what? Great job. Right answer. So I think what Adrienne is saying is that we're pushing back on that type of discourse. That is not helping teachers to understand how they made certain decisions.
Right.
That 6 times 6 was 36. Did you model those math, with manipulatives? Did you make an array? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, to talk about like how they made those decisions. So I just wanted to let the listeners know that it's a real thing. It's a real idea. That IRE is something we need as a whole math ed community push back against, and to go deeper, as Adrienne was saying, with asking students, and particularly Black students, like, what do they know? What do you already know about fractions? Doing those anticipatory sets. So anyway, I just wanted to let the listeners know that that's a real thing. It's called IRE.
And it's also what the students we interviewed are asking for. We had one student who said specifically, I want my future teacher to know to figure out what I know so that they can teach me something different. So I don't have to keep repeating the same things over and over again, like the same information. There's a lot of remediation that happens, especially in classrooms with Black students. And so can we build off of what I know instead of just teaching me the same things over and over again? The other part of this is when I think about the gift that this cohort is to teachers, I think about, what my colleagues just said around, we're not just telling them this is important, this is what you should do. We're actually giving them tools to support what we're asking them to do. So one of the tools that we just gave them in the first cohort was a student survey. So just to really pick their own students' brains and, just to see how have they experienced math and what would they like to see, right? What kind of experiences are they having? Do their teachers ask them questions about their mathematical thinking? Do they like to work in groups? What happens when, they're stuck? What do they want to happen? So these are questions that we asked our student interviewees during our interviews, and it's only fair to have those teachers go back and ask their own students some of these questions as well.
So you just gave them that instrument, so you don't have the results on that yet? Yeah.
No, we don't.
That'd be awesome.
we don't. But we will be getting those soon.
I'm sure it'll be eye-opening. One of the things that I love on the Math Narrative website, which is mathnarrative.org, and I'll put it in the show notes, of course, is that there's one page, and of course I've navigated away from that page. I think it might be the home page, where there's all these bubbles, right? And the bubbles show the emotions that students experience. Yeah, it's right. How students feel about math, right? Negative, neutral, positive. We're not going to spend a lot of time digging into it, because I think it would be more impactful for a listener to go to mathnarrative.org and click on one of those bubbles, because you'll hear the voice of a child saying how they feel when math feels interesting, or when they're confused or tired or annoyed. And that, when I saw that, I thought, this is beautiful. This is amazing, because it really does, like you're saying, it gives it. One of you was talking earlier, I forget who said this, about just talking about what made me think of to say this was this kind of pushes even more on student-centered learning. It's like deeper than that, right? Because you've heard the student-centered learning for years and years and years. John Vanderwall back in the day. I mean, it's been around, but this is different, because it's not thinking about, okay, what do students need? This is giving students, what do you need? What do you need? And when we talk about, when I work with teachers, I hear the narrative, right? I hear all of these narratives, and my pushback, like you said, Dionne, is, how do you know? How do you know, right? How do you know that they don't know their facts? Well, there's this worksheet that I'm like, okay, but that doesn't tell us anything about what they really know and what they really don't know. So how can we find out more? And that's when I think it's like, when the teachers see the students, hear the students, like witness the students, this is a beautiful thing.
It is. Yeah, we're really, really excited for the journey that our cohort is going on, but also what we are learning along the way. I learned so much during the interview process when we were interviewing the students, and even in this first cohort session that we had, just hearing the passion that the teachers have for this work. Like they're serious. Change is happening. Change is happening. And so I'm just excited for the students of these teachers and all teachers across the country who are really digging in and doing the work.
And when you talk about these teachers being serious and the change is happening, this is exactly why I'm having these conversations on this podcast, because I want other teachers and administrators to hear that this is possible. Right? Did you just say that, Deborah? This is possible. Right? And that there are other teachers in schools working with students, Black, brown students, who are doing this work and seeing results, not just with the one class that they have in front of them. Right? This is about a movement, and I'm so impressed and so proud, and I'm so grateful that you all have come onto this podcast to have this conversation. I would love to give you each a hug and hopefully see you in Atlanta. You're going to be in Atlanta, right? In the fall.
Absolutely, I'll be there.
Yeah. All right. Perfect.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you'd want listeners, if a teacher, and by the way, this podcast, I'm always pushing this out to teachers, administrators, and parents, because you mentioned it's the whole, it takes a village. It's all of us. Is there any other message that you would want to share before we wrap things up?
Yes,
go for it.
I have like 1,000 things, but maybe
1,000 is fine.
Go ahead, Adrienne.
I think one message I would like to just remind our fellow math educators about is time and the importance of taking the time to get to know their students in math class. It's something that happens, and a couple of us on the call can speak to how we operate in different subject areas, right? There's constant conversation, discourse in ELA, social studies, same kind of thing. Mathematics is not an area that it happens enough because there's so much focus on getting through the content rather than trying to get to know the children in the classroom.
Right.
And so I would just like to remind our fellow educators and remind the administrators in charge of creating schedules that it's important to take time in math class to get to know the students beyond the fun handshake when you first walk in the door, but really get to know what their interests are, what their math level abilities are. And there are many different ways you can do that. You can do that through questions on pre-assessments or just questions on sheets every once in a while that are not math related, but are important to your ability or as the teacher to build the relationships with your students. And so I would just like to throw that out there as an important part of the student's experience, and the teacher should be given time to make those relationships happen.
Thank you. Deborah. I know you're dying over
All
there.
right. Oh no, I'm actually looking to make sure that the noise that is happening out there is not being picked up.
Not aware.
And
Can't hear it.
no, but I just feel that we are coming to the end, and I wanted to kind of like do a little boop and pass it over to Dionne by saying Math Trust is all about TRUST, all caps, and the tagline being, let's trust our students to do the math. The one thing that we led with would be those trust actions and how important it is to, Dionne,
trust our students to do the math.
Throw out labels. And
yeah.
So, helping the teachers understand what those letters actually stand for and how they can walk into their classrooms. And the focus this week was start by throwing out labels. That's that first T. So I thought Dionne could just run that down to wrap it up.
Okay. Yes. So our trust actions, it's a framework that I developed as I was working with different districts. But it's really, how do we trust each and every student to do the math? And so trust in all caps, T, the first T being throw out labels, the R being respond to student thinking, which we talked about, right? It's not necessarily happening with let's respond to student thinking. The U being use high quality instructional materials. Very important, but not just have them, but use them in a way that supports conceptual learning. And in addition to the procedural and the application pieces. The S is for seeking out brilliance. We want to make sure that we're actually curious about what students already know. And then the last T is my favorite, which is take time to study the coherence and the standards, because we can't, if we don't have our content knowledge on point, what are we doing? What are we actually doing? And so those are the ways that we trust our students. Those are actionable things that we can do to develop our trust in our students, and not necessarily, get them to trust us. That's important too. But I think we often miss the mutual part with us trusting them. Yes. And we need to be actionable about that. And so that's why the framework has been working.
Beautiful. That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I could talk to you ladies all night, and I hope that we can have more conversations about the math narrative project as a math. I hope that we can have more conversations about the math narrative project as it evolves, and I can't wait to hear how the findings and things that come out from it, and just hear from the teachers of their experience, because I think it's so important. What a great opportunity for our country, our world. So thank you for everything you do. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
So they can find you. I already said it, but the first thing is the mathnarrative.org, the website. I highly encourage everybody to stop what they're doing right now and go to that website. But is there any place else that they should be looking for things coming out?
Yes, Math Trust. Our website is mathtrusted.com. Okay. And so you can reach out there. You can find download a free poster of the Trust actions. And you can reach out to me there, and we can take it from there. So I did want to share that this opportunity, that the cohort is it's funded by the Gates Foundation through the Math Narrative Project, and we still work outside of that. And so if you're a school or district, if your state, if you have some questions or need some consultant work, we have an incredible team of folks that are ready to help you. So
beautiful. So get in touch, because we can all use a little help. That's fabulous. I don't know how you find the time to do it all. All right. Well, thank you so
much.
Never enough time. Never enough time. We're putting in the work, though, putting in the reps.
So right? We're doing it. It's important.
We're doing it. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you stuck around to the end, first, I want to thank you for your commitment to shifting your perspective on what it means to be a math person. And I want to give you a quick bio for each of these incredible women we just spoke to. If you want to learn more, you can get in touch with any of them. Check out the show notes, and all of their connections will be there, ways to get in touch with them. So I'm going to start with Dionne Aminata. Dionne Aminata is a math educator and consultant with over 24 years of experience across K-12 and higher education. She founded Math Trust to help educators build mutual trust with students and recognize Black brilliance, to ensure that all students are entrusted to engage in grade level mathematics. Dionne has held leadership roles at Illustrative Math, CCSSO, and NCSM, and is currently pursuing her PhD in math education at Stanford University. Deborah Peart is the Mather movement captured in a book. Her book was released on September 2nd, 2025. So if you don't already have it in your hands, it's time to go check it out and get the book at your most recent conference, or anywhere where books are sold. The title of the book is Readers Read, Writers Write, Mathers Math: Bridging the Gap Between Literacy and Mathematics. Dr. Nicole Joseph is an associate professor of mathematics education in the Department of Teaching and Learning at the Peabody College of Education at Vanderbilt University. She studies the mathematics identities of K-12 Black girls, specifically micro, meso, and macro factors that shape their identity development. and Adrienne Baytops Paul. She is the founder of Solution Spaces, an education consulting firm that provides professional learning and instructional coaching for K-8 math educators and teacher leaders. She is also the assistant director of Impact Florida's Solving with Students teacher cadre. Adrienne has been an educator for over 25 years. So thank you again for your commitment to shifting your perspective on what it means to be a math person. If you found value in any part of this episode, I encourage you to go on social media and tag, share, and also leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts, because the more reviews and conversation that happens around this podcast, the more these voices can be elevated. So thank you again for being a loyal listener. And if you're new, go back and check out some of the previous episodes. I appreciate you so much. I'm Pam Brett. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Blue Glasses Math. Please follow me wherever you get your podcasts and follow along on the conversation on Instagram. And remember, being a math person is all just a matter of perspective.